Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Training Industry Learning Tech Showcase, AI in Training, sponsored by CGS, GP Strategies, NIIT, Quantified, and VPS. I'm Avery Vogt, Events Coordinator here at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you could join us. Before we get started, I would like to just quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit questions in the Q&A panel. All questions will be addressed during the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. At the end of the event, you'll notice a short survey has popped open in your browser, and we'd appreciate your thoughts on today's event. All of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's Learning Tech Showcase, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and our podcasts. Visit trainingindustry.com to learn more. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's speaker, Russ Summers. Russ leads marketing for Quantified. Russ has been working with AI since 2020 and has been featured on multiple industry podcasts. Russ brings over 20 years of experience in marketing business-to-business SaaS products across a variety of industries. Russ, we are very, very excited to have you today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Avery. And it's delightful to be here and delighted to know that at least Cliff appreciates the guitars. I hope everybody else does as well. I'm going to jump in here and share my screen and take you through a little bit about training with AI. Hold on. We are not yet seeing what we should see. That should be it. I believe you're seeing my screen. Excellent.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So we're going to talk about how to revolutionize training with AI-driven role play. And as Avery kindly mentioned, I've been in AI a number of years. The company as a whole has spent over 10 years studying effective communication using AI and machine learning to do that, which fundamentally makes us what I call AI OGs. We've been doing this for many years, pre-ChatGPT. And so we've got a roster of clients from Dell to Sanofi to Novartis, Ports Benefits, Open Lending, iRhythm, to kind of prove that we actually have some benefit. And I'm going to talk a lot about sales training here, although we also work with customers that do other types of training. But one of the reasons we've often focused on sales training is because it's so difficult sometimes. When we talk with sales leaders, we find consistently they'll say things like 20% of my reps carry 80% of my number. We find that the time to, once you hire a rep and train them, getting them actually ramped to where they're fully contributing takes a long time, and there's a lot of uncertainty associated with that. There's still a lot of guesswork. And there's a lot of manager bandwidth involved in the coaching needed to make reps effective. No manager really has the time to do as much role play as would benefit their team. And so we see that really in sales performance across organizations. And some of this data is our proprietary data. Some of this data comes from Salesforce's State of Sales report for 2024. We see the average time to quota capable is almost a year. And that's a shocking statistic to think that when you hire someone, you're placing a bet on their performance almost a year out. We know that high-performing reps outperform average reps by over 2x. And we also know that a lot of reps in this environment are missing quota. And we know that fewer than half of managers are able to spend more than 30 minutes per week coaching each individual rep. So there's really this coaching and performance evaluation deficit that we're working to close. And frankly, when we talk with sales leaders and ask what would make your reps better, everyone says the same thing: role play. Let's give them practice. Let's have them do it. And so the question, of course, is why aren't we doing it? And let's think about the world we live in versus the world we might aspire to live in. In the existing world, managers are responsible for coaching, but they're stretched way too thin. And so role play is infrequent, it's awkward, it's superficial, and we come up with that number again, 20% of reps carrying 80% of the sales number. The world that we're working to move our customers into with AI sales coaching software includes unlimited practice, disciplined feedback based on analytics that are objective, not subjective. And we're moving our customers towards a world in which 40% of their reps become high performers and help carry that number. And that's a radical change in overall team performance and team output. As far as why it works, it's pretty simple stuff. It works for sales reps when it feels real, when they're in an immersive environment that feels as real as their last video call. For managers, this works when they have the insights and feedback to scale their coaching across teams consistently. So every rep is trained on the market, the message, the product, and the process. And from a sales leadership perspective, it's a question of being able to understand everyone's capability. We go from we have just ramped this rep and we hope that they perform to in my queue of ramping reps or my reps that are being trained on a new product or message, I can compare their performance even before they start selling and understand what their capabilities might be. The results that come out of this are profound. Anybody that thinks that sales reps don't practice because they don't want to practice, now that I look at our data, I no longer believe that, because reps with access to our products get 6 times as much practice as other reps. And they get more manager coaching because with those practices, the managers now have data, feedback, data that they can provide feedback on to those reps, resulting in a 28% increase in sales rep capabilities. And so we see increase in win rates. We see a reduction in the time to get a rep quota capable, and we see an increase in sales pipeline simply because reps are working more efficiently and not having deals fall out of pipeline when they don't need to. As an example, I'm going to jump into a case study from one of our customers. This is Sanofi. They are a pharmaceutical company. And obviously, in that case, you're selling pretty complex products and you need your field team to be certified on those products. And certification, you talk to anybody that runs certifications, I would imagine many people on this call do. There's this overarching theme of I have just a few trainers and not very much time and a whole lot of people that I need to train. So in Sanofi's case, that is going to be 30 to 500 trainees at a time, depending on the product and the practice area that we're focusing on. There will be a small number of trainers, and they'll be trying to get everyone certified in the verbal examination portion of the certification. They'll be trying to do that in 15 minutes per person. But there's a huge challenge there in terms of the trainer to trainee ratio just doesn't give you any slack. You can improve that by bringing in more people to do certification, but then you lose control of the certifying process and you get more subjectivity from additional people, all acting in good faith, but not necessarily interpreting the rubric quite the same. And Sanofi wanted to reduce the training time and eliminate repetition and inconsistency. And that's what we worked with them to do. But before we talk about the trainers, let's talk about the trainees. This is feedback from a prior certification that was done manually via manual role play. And the feedback was frankly kind of harsh. Certifications were chaotic, a lot of downtime, a lot of waiting around. So we partnered with Sanofi and asked, what can we build that will change that situation? And the program we rolled out for them included Victoria, a virtual coach, so that as users logged on to the system, she would guide them, orient them, help them navigate the system, and help them understand their results. They also worked with a virtual certifier, Dr. Natalie White. Again, Natalie, just like Victoria, is an avatar, not an actual human, but she functioned as a practice partner and a certification examiner. So prompting the conversation, using the script and the details that the customer wanted to test their reps on. And each rep that went through got a detailed evaluation, starting with a score, passing or failing, but then detailed information about where they did well and where they could have perhaps done better. And that's the sort of thing that we do. And the results for the business were profound. Trained all the reps very quickly, saved 250 hours, could test and demonstrate a 3 to 5x increase in proficiency for the reps that were trained. But then also, the learners had really good feedback in terms of this was less stressful. This gave me time for practice. I was able to certify at my own pace and not rush through. I had unlimited opportunities for practice. This seemed more efficient. So, all in all, and this is the Sanofi story, but we see this across our customer base. When people are able to actually deploy an enterprise-ready solution for AI role play and training, they see substantial results. And from here, I'm going to jump into the product and give you just a little taste of what it's capable of. So give me a moment as I find the right thing to share here.
Russ, while you're doing that, we did have a question that came through the chat from George, which you may get to as you're going through your demo. But George was wondering, can you integrate this into another human performance model that aligns with role play events?
What a good question. So fundamentally, if I understand the question, when we say a human performance model, we're asking, can we take the way we would do this with a human examiner where we're clear on the rubric we want, we're clear on the questions we want asked, et cetera, and can we replicate that in the simulated environment? That's what I heard, Avery. Am I getting that right?
I believe so. And George, correct us if we are not correct.
Excellent. Well, if so, yes, that is exactly, frankly, what we do, because the last thing we want to do is impose on your team a new process, a new rubric, a new way of doing things. We'd rather take what expert trainers already know how to do and enable them to scale that across teams so they can actually spend the time doing what they love doing, which is training rather than working through the very difficult manual process of a manual certification. So I'm going to scroll to, there's a number here, of course, and you can see when you look at the software, you can see that I have various trainings assigned to me, everything from a leadership training, helping me have a conversation with a difficult employee, to a traditional objection handling. But since I've been in pharma mode since thinking about Sanofi, I'm going to jump down to a pharmaceutical demo about a fictitious vaccine called Dosimer. It's a fictitious flu vaccine.
You will soon be connected to Dr. Thompson, an AI physician who is interested in a new imaginary vaccine called Dosimer. The goal here is to get the feel of how a conversational, simulated practice might look and feel. Since this vaccine is imaginary, the answers are made up too. I will give you a few moments to prepare. When you are ready to start the practice, just click Begin Call.
A few moments to prepare means time for a little drink of coffee, and I'm going to jump in.
Hello, it's good to see you.
Dr. Thompson, it's great to see you. How have you been?
I've been well, thank you. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I understand you had some questions about Dosimer after our last meeting, and what I'd love to do today is dive deep and see if I can answer those for you.
I appreciate that. I have some concerns about administering Dosimer since it's new and relatively unknown. Let's start with understanding its indication. Could you begin by telling me what Dosimer is indicated for?
Absolutely. The answer is very simple. Anyone that you might provide a traditional vaccine, flu vaccine to, you should consider Dosimer 4 because it provides the same protection, but over a longer time horizon.
I need more details. Could you tell me about the clinical trials that were conducted for Dosimer? I'm particularly interested in the sample size, diversity of the study population, and the outcomes concerning efficacy and safety.
Of course. In that case, what we really want to talk about is the phase 3 clinical trials that included 15,000 participants. And know that we've been running clinical trials for the past 7 years in order to obtain the FDA approval needed. We found with that, there was an 82.3 relative risk reduction in terms of hospitalizations. Side effects that we saw were minimal and typically, as with a traditional flu vaccine, related to discomfort, pain, swelling at the injection site, best handled with ibuprofen and ice packs.
The data on the relative risk reduction looks impressive. Can you provide details from clinical trials about how Dosimer performed in diverse populations? Could you
Great.
provide some details on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great question. I should have mentioned that in the phase 3. We've worked across a number of different types of populations, ranging from age 18 to age 65. Diverse populations in terms not just age, but gender, ethnicity, really everything else. And we found the results to be quite consistent across those populations. I'm happy to share the exact data with you after our call, Dr. Thompson, but fundamentally it performed well across those diverse populations.
That's encouraging. My next concern is about safety. Fatigue and headache are somewhat tolerable, but the injection site pain rate is quite high.
It is higher than with an annual flu vaccine, but the flip side is you're getting the injection once every 10 years, not once every year. And so what we've found in our interviews with patients is that they're willing to take that trade-off of perhaps another day's worth of pain from the injection.
I see. What is the recommended dosage and administration schedule for Dosimer?
It is 50 milligrams injected into typically deltoid muscle to give enough muscle for it to work in, and it is administered seasonally, much like a seasonal flu vaccine, with the exception again that it lasts much longer.
Thank you for the clarification. I would like to proceed with exploring how to integrate this into our practice. Could you elaborate on the implementation and administration schedules?
Absolutely. We have everything your practice will need in terms of materials queued up to help you get started, marketing materials to help educate your patients, etc. And fundamentally, because it is an injection very similar to what you're already doing for flu, there's very little additional needed, we find, with most practices to begin using it.
That sounds helpful. Those efficacy rates are promising, but safety is my top priority. What are the next steps for potentially integrating Dosimer into my practice?
And just to keep us on track, I'm going to go ahead and end call there, although I have not answered all of Dr. Thompson's questions. But let's see, this will take a moment to process, or I can simply flip to my results from the prior call because I do have all of those at hand. So let's zip into that. In the earlier call I did this morning, you can see that I did not pass the exam. You can see that it gave me detailed feedback in terms of what I should focus on. You can see that it rated my product knowledge, my communication skills. It finds me a professional, which frankly, I'm delighted to hear. Not everybody does. And it's got a lot of useful feedback as you scroll through here. So this is the grading against the objectives of the call, but there's two other ways to look at these results. One is skills. Now, skills don't directly feed my score here, but they help learners understand what they're good at and where they can gain where they can gain advantage from practicing better. And you can see, for example, that I'm rated on most of skills as proficient, but that I could do a better job of being clear in my conversation. And then it gives me specific points for each of those, either what I did well or what I can focus on. And then the third way to evaluate a call such as this is to look at what we call message adherence, meaning there were key messages that I was trained on. How well did I convey those key messages? And you can see that the specific ones that were laid out, there were ones in which I performed well, and there were ones in which I could do better. But in each case, it covers what did you do well, other than oops, looks like you didn't cover any of the facts, and then highlights what I can do better. So that's fundamentally what the software does. As discussed, it's not just sales training, as we also help managers with different difficult conversations and other use cases, but that's in broad strokes what the software can do. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here and reshare. And we can get to questions. We'll get to questions. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're excited to be partnering with Training Industry on this. We're offering a 14-day free trial to Training Industry members. Sort of the criterion are, you got to be on this webinar because you're hearing about it here first. The trials will be in our learner experience model. They won't be custom built to your business, but they'll let you test and get your hands dirty. And the other thing to know is this is for corporate prospects only. We don't currently serve independent trainers and consultants, although we're always gratified that they seem to find a fair amount of interest in our solution. So that's what I'd like to conclude with today. I'd like to, from here, go, what questions do people have that I might be able to answer?
Awesome. Yes, lots of questions coming through.
Good.
So one of them, to start, some clarification from George about the human performance model. They have a human performance model certification, and they thought that this may be an extension for practice. So basically, they want to know if this could be a third-party integration into another tool.
Potentially, yeah, that's the sort of thing that, it depends on what the tool is and our integration roadmap, but I'd love to talk about that. And my email is on the slide right here. So George, if you want to pursue that conversation, by all means, feel free to shoot me a note and we can see what we can figure out.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see, lots of other questions coming through. So another question here. So you can input any problem into this role play simulation, is that correct? And would the client have to put in their own content before the role play to, like, on the back end to set it all up?
In terms of, we do need to start with knowing what you want to train your audience on. But usually what we find is organizations have been doing that and they've got all the training materials. So oftentimes what an organization will give us is, here are our presentations from training. Here are the rubrics we grade on. Here's the product or message information. And even if the client records calls with Gong, Chorus, or similar, here are some recorded calls that serve as examples of great calls and examples of calls that might benefit from coaching. So our team's really good at bringing that information together and turning that into simulations that are built for your market and your audience.
That's great. There's a couple questions here about the assessment portion. So for that, can the client customize the assessment evaluation, like scale, like in the back end? So they're sort of the grading process, is that customizable?
Put it this way, we specialize in building this software and making it work well for you. You specialize in knowing what your audience needs to be trained on. So absolutely, we will start with, what do you want to score people on? What are the skills? What is the knowledge that matters that you want to test people on, that you want to train people on? And we build the simulations to accomplish that.
Amazing. Okay, one question just came through from Brad. he was saying these are great questions of an understandable technical nature. And he goes, in addition to this level of technical expertise, our representatives need to show interpersonal skills and confidence with senior executives. So how would the system go about assessing those level of engagement skills?
Great question. I'd almost flip the question back and say, and how do we assess those today? Because if a human trainer can assess it, so can we. And this gets back to the 10 years of assessing communication with technology and AI prior to, embarking on this, on building a simulator product. If you can help us understand what how precisely you evaluate that, we can build program the software in order to do that. And we already have a head start on many of those things because you saw it rating me on skills like confidence, clarity, those sorts of things. So those are very much, if you're trying to get people to perform well in front of an executive audience, which is maybe the most daunting thing to train people on. We have a lot of experience with that. In fact, we work with Harvard Business School and other organizations like that that are specifically interested in that competency. So we've got some ideas there, but we'd also love to work with you on understanding how you measure that today.
Thank you, Russ. That was great. Let's see, another question here. We hear a lot about the risks with AI from proprietary data ending up in the model, et cetera. How do you prevent that?
That's a really good question. I can tell you how you don't prevent it is you go out and you plug directly into OpenAI's model or Anthropic's model, and you say, I hope nothing bad happens, because something bad will happen. And I'm not trying to scare you. I just spend a lot of time playing with the models, and they get trained on the information they're provided. They can hallucinate and provide imaginary answers, etc. So a lot of times I think of what we do as, in addition, we certainly leverage those models, but there's a layer of mediation in between that's based on that intellectual property we've built over the past 10 years. So we can understand what is safe and can be surfaced in the software to users and what can't be. And that because we're enterprise grade, avoids the information sort of backwashing into the model such that your competitive secrets end up in someone else's hands. And I'm really glad whoever asked that question asked it, because that's an important one right now. It's not that hard at this point to do things with AI, but to do things in a safe way that protects enterprises, there's a little more skill, practice, and experience involved with.
Great, thank you. And you kind of touched on this next one a little bit, but are there other use cases beyond sales training that Quantified can address? I do see someone specifically asking about the education sector.
That would be super interesting. Education sector, other than like Harvard Business School, is not something I guess if we have Harvard Business School, yes, we have clients in the education sector now, don't we? But one of the ones that struck me most, and it came through a client, is they wanted to train their frontline managers on how to have difficult conversations with an underperforming employee that might be having conflicts with other team members. And that one, I don't have time to dive into that simulation today, I don't think, though I've got a version of it. But it struck me, I have been managing people for almost 40 years now in my career. And still, when I dived into that one, it felt very real. And I kind of sweated the way I might in a conversation with a difficult employee like that. So, yeah, if there's a scenario that people need to be trained on and it involves human conversations, this is a solution worthy of consideration.
Thank you for clarifying that. Joe's asking as well about can the system measure engagement like facial recognition, or is most of it the verbal cues? So are they actually like checking eye contact and so on?
I almost wish my CEO founder were on the call, because this is where he started building the business years and years ago, when he became aware that working on Wall Street, no one would give him guidance on that. They give him guidance on his spreadsheets. They wouldn't give him guidance on, am I making eye contact? Am I coming across as confident? All of those 14,000 behaviors that add up to you are a credible speaker in this environment or you are not. And so all of that is taken into account to some degree in how we evaluate and rank those skills. We're certainly, when we're grading against a rubric of, did I say all the right things about the medication? We're very much focusing on the verbal portion of that, but we have the background in the other behavioral analytics as well that are super important to understand how well people come across in a conversation.
That was great. Thank you, Russ. We are just about out of time. So I want to give you an opportunity to share any final words with our audience. This has been a really great session.
I've enjoyed it, Avery. I'm so pleased with all the questions, and just my email is there, russ@quantified.ai. And if you're interested in a 14-day free trial, shoot me an email and we can have a conversation and get that going.
Awesome. Thank you, Russ, again. And yeah, we'll be sure to pass along any questions as well that we may have missed during this time. And I would like to just close us out for the day by reminding everyone, I'm sorry, for the session, not the day. We have one more session. We will be taking a 15-minute break. And up next, we will have speakers from VPS joining us for their session, Keeping Human Intelligence in Your AI Learning Solutions. Lessons learned creating AI solutions with clients. So in just a moment, I will end this session and you can join our next session by returning to the event lobby and going to the session tab. Thank you all. And thank you again, Russ. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you soon.